Welcome back, guys, to episode number 5 of the Dawn of Man series. Today we're going to talk about the fall of collectivism and the many unintended consequences that follow it. Now, when we talk about the fall of collectivism, I really see 3 trends that are already taking place, that are converging at the same time, that will affect the future generations as they're already now being born and growing up. The 3 trends, and what we really have to think about here, is that the children being born today in 2018, well, then when they turn 20, they're almost in the year 2040. So the people being born right now are the generations that will be growing up in the eras that we're talking about. So the next 12 years and how these kids will be raised are key for the future of our society. So to get back to it, the 3 trends that I see converging right now is A, the fall of the educational system. Secondly, the fall of the family unit, and third, the fall of organized religion. All 3 of those have already had established trends of how all of them are in decline. Schools are going from offline to online, where kids don't need to go sit in classrooms anymore, but rather just look at screens, look at PowerPoints, and learn this way. They no longer have that teacher, that mentor that guides them, but much rather just some person that is teaching millions of people via the screen. At the same time, we also see the fall in the family unit. For decades now, there has been a decrease in the amount of people getting married and a steep increase in the amount of people getting a divorce. As of right now, and I think this was according to the CDC, only about 6.9 people out of 1,000 are getting married in the United States. So that's a very small number. And of those 6.9, about 3.2 are getting divorced. So I think right now the divorce rate in the United States is sitting around 40%. So out of almost every 2 marriages, 1 falls apart. And many people, they get divorced multiple times. And the third trend I see converging is the decline in organized religion. Again, this is something that you can already look up the statistic that is already happening. So the idea is that now more and more people are either dropping out of their organized religion. Many people don't even join in the first place. I think we have an all-time high in atheists. And also we see that change from being religious, going to church, to just being spiritual. See, you can be spiritual, but it's a much more individualistic approach. The thing that we see with all 3 of those trends is that there's no longer that patriotic relationship. You don't no longer have that teacher, that mentor, that is guiding you, that's telling you this is how you should live your life. Same thing you don't see in religion. You no longer have the pastor telling you, these are the values you should be living by. You no longer have the parent telling you this is right and this is wrong. So what you notice right here is that decline in collectivism is directly linked to a decline in values. Because the way we're being taught values is through the only way really is through these 3 venues. So not everybody's religious, but they replace it with having a family that's teaching them what is right, what is wrong. They have school teaching them what is right, what is wrong. And this is a directly correlation to what we already see now in many studies when it comes to criminal activity. Those prone to criminal activity are generally coming from broken homes, generally, skip on school, don't go to school, are truant, and oftentimes, lack religion in their lives. So now we see all these 3 trends converging where the majority, it's no longer the minority, but much rather it's the majority growing up with maybe parents that were never married or probably divorced, so growing up with single parents that probably don't even go to school, but much rather, get their education through online. Or honestly, by 2040, you don't even have school anymore. So this is really where, we'll get to this at the end, where education needs to be rethought. And lastly, of course, religion plays less and less of a role. So I want to quickly explore why these things are happening, okay? So why is it that we see a decline in marriage? Why is it that we see an increase in divorce? Because people might say, oh, Felix, it's just a temporary trend, this might change. But the fact is, this has been happening for decades. See, the reason is that when the concept of marriage came about, people had life expectancies of perhaps, let's say, 25 years. So when people get married at, let's say, age 16, they knew, hey, I'm going to be with this person for like 9 years, 10 years. If I get really old, maybe for 20 years. See, the difference now is that people's life expectancy keeps increasing. Already now we're getting to, I think, an average life expectancy of like 72 years, 75 years, and that number keeps getting expanded and expanded. Now we're looking at, when we talk about transhumanism and immortality, we're looking at the possibility of getting 500 years old, as the Google executive predicted. So the whole concept is very different. It started when we're thinking about, committing to a person for 10 years, 20 years. Now we're saying, are we committing for 50 years? For 100 years? however the lifetime can last. So people are no longer open to that. On top, you can add another layer, is that now, back when the institution of marriage was created, again, it had very religious subtones. You also add another layer that, with the more, feminist empowerment movement, there's no longer, the fact that, there's one parent, working, producing, and one parent staying home, taking care of the kids. Now we have, two parents working, producing. And this is at no point, there's no judgment, there's great points for both sides, but the outcome is still the same. So, if you wanted to solve it, then, those two parents have to find a way to, collaborate, to be better parents, but to kind of make it work where the kids still have that support system that they used to find in their mothers. But the problem is that these societal changes are happening so fast right now. That movement is gaining so much power, so much traction, and it's a great thing. But we fail to address the consequences that come out of it. We need to make sure that the kids that are being born right now and in the next 10 years, so essentially the parenthood of the next 30 years addresses that issue. The kids, even if they grow up with two separate parents, two parents being busy following their careers, and again, this is a result of the rise of individualism, the fall of the collective. We grew up in a society where, we needed the collective. We were hunting and gatherers. We needed to band together to kill the saber-toothed tiger, to kill the elephant, and all that stuff. But now we have all those services. Everyone is on the quest to fulfill their own purpose, their own vision, their own individual desires. But while that is the ultimate utopia for the generation right now, it will lead to an enormous amount of problems for the generation to come. Because these kids, again, most likely growing up without the parental support that every generation for the past millennia was used to. And on top, most parents that will be parents for that generation have already withdrawn themselves from organized religion. So the kids are very unlikely to follow into that same path. And thirdly, now we've already noticed where, education is moving online. You no longer have those teachers, that make sure that, for example, hey, you don't bully, hey, you don't do bad things, hey, you don't steal. Because the school experience is so much bigger than just the classes we take and the lessons we learn. Because a lot of those lessons take place outside the classroom. When you do something wrong, you get called to the principal's office, and the principal, puts you in detention and tells you, hey, man, this is not how the world works, right? So these ideas of fairness, these ideas of value, these ideas of taking care of one another are getting completely forgotten. So this will, in my opinion, when I take a look at all that research and take a look at all the various trends that are happening, will lead to a generation that is raised, in an age of individualism, but to an extent is so tired of that individualism. So I think we'll see a two-way split. We'll see one, and when I'm talking about this generation, we're talking mostly about Generation Alpha and partially Generation Beta. So this is what comes after Gen Z. So I believe the number is if you're born after, I believe either 2011, 2015, then you belong to Generation Alpha. And I think 2025 is Generation Beta. But anyway, the point is that there will be a two-way split with these generations. One of them will be drawn towards more traditionalism. They will find some kind of home, so to say, in organized faith again. And I think in the future, the multiple religions we have right now will mostly come back together and organize as one kind of, united religion, because it is no longer, we have all these different religions that are fighting each other, but much rather, hey, we're all people of faith, we all, believe in a God, we all believe in these certain values and all these traditions. So there will be a lot more coming together, because it's no longer us versus them, meaning us Christians versus the Muslims, but much rather us religious people against those that are so obsessed with the individualism and the technologies. So I think a part of of society will really find refuge in removing themselves from where society has been moving, and really strive to create their own little society with true collectivism and a little bit, reinvigorating almost like that sense of nostalgia, that sense of, community that we've had for the past millennia. The other half will begin to seek that feeling of collectivism in rebellion. Because what I think a lot of these children especially like I think it will be very prone with boys. They will be rebellious. They will be seeking change because they're so tired of the society they're growing up with. Because what you have to understand is that these kids will be growing up in the age of automation. By the time the kids that are born today on this date, the time when they turn 20 is 2038. They will be growing up in the age of automation. They will be growing up in the age when they graduate, there's no jobs for them. They will be growing up without the support system from their family. They will be growing up without the support system that so many things that we're used to supply. And also, they'll be growing up without that set of values, knowing what is right, what is wrong, not knowing to support one another. They will be very easily influenced by those providing guidance. Because that is something they lacked all their lives. This is something they desired all their lives. When a revolutionary leader comes along and challenges the status quo, and challenges all the things that they've been having to grow up with, the lack of opportunity, the lack of support, and all these things, they will follow suit, and they will be a generation of revolutionaries that will really turn everything on its heads, because they're tired of the age they're growing up with. And I think this generation can be the catalyst that will bring us back to the dark ages. And look, their intentions might be, well. They might see all the bad, that individualism and that technology has brought us, and they will want to put an end to it. And the same applies for those with seeking tradition. But I think although there might be some rise in religious extremism, I think a lot of them will simply want to remove themselves, will simply build their own society and turn their back on whatever the world is doing. While there might be some crusaders out there, I think the majority will simply try to live their own life the way they intended. But that rebellious group, that group that is looking for purpose, that is looking for meaning, will be the ones that really will start something that is bigger than any of us can imagine. So what is the takeaway from this? What is something that we really need to, what is the action step that we can do? Because, it's one thing to talk about problems, but these are problems that nobody talks about, right? So what can we do? I think the biggest thing that we need to recognize is to replace the things that we're taking away. So, if you're a parent, even if you're my age, I most likely will be parent to somebody in Gen A or Gen B. So I need to be aware that even if, the family structure falls apart and, I pursue my own individualism and my own goals and all that, that I still am, that father figure, that guiding factor that teaches values to the next generation. At the same time, when we look at our educational system, I think we need to make the shift from educating information to educating concepts and values. Because look, the time when these kids grow up, the value of information will be worthless. Because already now we can pull up our phones, we can look up all the information in the world, and there's no point in memorizing things. The age of multiple choice is over. Because look, just because you memorized who the presidents were, that doesn't give you any actual applicable knowledge. Which in the past there was some value, because if you memorized things, you were a lot faster than whoever had to run to the library and go through thousands of books. But with the age of technology, there's no longer point in this. So the real value in education, so to say, is to teach concepts, teach analytical thinking, but also teach values, right? Because that is something that will be lacking, and I think we'll be so quick to strip away education, because we're like, well, they no longer need to know the information, they can get it from their phones. No more school, we don't need it, because that age is already here. The age of dropouts is so popular right now. But sometimes I'm concerned of a lot of people that drop out of high school, maybe even never go to high school, maybe and never go to college and all that stuff. They lack a lot of the social growth that most of us experienced. So we need to make sure that we still provide these social guidelines, that we still provide these values, that people, and we talked about this in a previous vlog, that we have these conversations where the next generation is aware of the social contract, that we have, because otherwise we're going to have a lot of sociopaths on our hands. So guys, I hope you found this video useful. And it's been a conversation that I've really wanted to have, because we talk a lot about technology, we've talked AR, we've talked centralization, we've talked so many things, but I wanted to touch on the societal aspect as well, because with every technological innovation comes a societal change, and there will also be political change that we'll be talking about in the future. But all of us need to be aware of this, because we are so quick to move towards individualism. We are so quick to, throw away the educational system. But we need to think about what are the consequences in 10 years and in 20 years. Because sometimes I will agree with you that, for example, the educational system, the main purpose, is to learn information. Useless. But the side benefits is what holds us together. So we need to have these conversations, especially with our legislators. We need to have these conversations, with our families and all that kind of stuff. As you and I, as people in our, let's say, 20s, teens, 30s, as we grow up and become the next leaders of the world, we need to make sure that we ensure the longevity of our society and our civilization, and don't let our lack of foresight cause a traumatic fall. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time. Take care.